the break of dawn, the sound of distant artillery echoed through the shattered landscape, a haunting reminder that no one would survive unscathed. Deep behind enemy lines, one lone soldier crouched in the shadows, his uniform torn, his rifle the only thing standing between him and certain death. Around him, thousands of enemy troops advanced, their numbers overwhelming, their intentions merciless. Every step he took could be his last, every breath could betray his position. And yet, he moved forward not out of duty but sheer instinct, knowing that survival would demand every ounce of courage, cunning, and willpower he possessed. This is the story of how one man, utterly alone, defied impossible odds in a war that had already claimed millions, and left a mark on history few would ever know. The morning mist clung to the ruined buildings, muffling the groans of the wounded and masking the scent of smoke that hung heavily in the air. Every broken window, every shattered wall was a reminder of the battle that had raged the night before. Streets were littered with debris, broken rifles, and discarded helmets. The city that had once been alive with laughter and commerce now belonged to silence, punctuated only by the distant roar of tanks and the sporadic rattle of gunfire. It was in this ghostly battlefield that our soldier found himself, forced to navigate through chaos that would have overwhelmed even the most seasoned veteran. He paused behind a crumbling wall, pressing his back against the cold stone, feeling the vibrations of heavy boots on the ground as enemy soldiers scoured the ruins. His heart raced, but he forced himself to breathe slowly, counting each inhale and exhale as he scanned the surroundings. The enemy was methodical, trained, and merciless. Every shadow could hide a sniper, every alleyway could conceal a trap, yet he could not stop moving. Stagnation meant death, hesitation meant annihilation. Each step forward was measured, deliberate, and fraught with risk. His mind replayed fragments of training, lessons that now felt distant and almost irrelevant compared to the raw reality surrounding him. Years of drills, marksmanship practice, and simulated exercises could never prepare a man for being utterly alone, surrounded by an overwhelming enemy force. Yet instinct took over where training left off. He relied on his senses. The faint crackle of radio static in the distance, the subtle rustle of leaves betraying a hidden patrol, the almost imperceptible shift of shadows as the sun rose higher in the sky. Every detail mattered. Time moved strangely in this state of heightened awareness. Minutes felt like hours, every sound and movement was magnified in his perception. A falling piece of rubble could indicate an advancing soldier. A distant shout could signal a trap. He learned to filter out the irrelevant chaos, to focus only on what mattered, the immediate threat and the narrow path that could lead him out alive. As he moved through the rubble-strewn streets, he found remnants of those who had tried before him. Bodies lay where they had fallen, some in unnatural positions, others slumped in silent terror. Their equipment was scattered, rifles abandoned, packs ripped open. He noted each fallen figure with grim precision, not out of disrespect, but to learn, to anticipate what might have gone wrong, and to avoid repeating their fate. Hours passed, each moment a delicate dance with death. Enemy patrols moved in sweeping formations, rifles scanning, bayonets ready. He hugged the shadows, using every broken wall, every overturned cart as cover. The scent of gunpowder was pervasive, mingling with the earth and the faint metallic tang of blood. He could see the desperation in the eyes of some soldiers, the calculated ruthlessness in others. But he pressed on. The goal was simple: survive, adapt, and live to fight another day. By midday, he had reached what seemed like a temporary lull in the fighting. From his vantage point atop a ruined building, he could observe the enemy's movements more clearly. They were organized, disciplined, and relentless. And yet, despite the overwhelming odds, he began to notice cracks in their formation. A lone soldier stepping too far from cover, a patrol moving in predictable patterns, a sniper momentarily revealing his position. These were opportunities, tiny, fleeting, but enough for someone skilled and determined. With a careful breath, he raised his rifle, the cold metal reassuring in his hands. Every shot had to count. Each engagement carried the weight of survival, not heroics. His training had taught him precision, but survival demanded patience and cunning beyond what any drill could instill. He fired only when necessary, silent and deliberate, each action calculated to keep him alive. As the sun began its descent, shadows grew longer and the battlefield shifted again. What had seemed like a moment of calm was now filled with the rustle of movement, the occasional bark of orders, the whine of incoming artillery. He pressed on, moving from cover to cover, avoiding open spaces, listening, learning, calculating. Every step was a negotiation with fate itself. By nightfall, he had traversed what would have been impossible distances for anyone else, yet he was far from safe. Exhaustion gnawed at him, hunger and thirst clawed at his body, and yet the drive to survive burned hotter than any fatigue. Somewhere in the darkness, the enemy searched for him. Somewhere in the shadows, death waited. But he was not yet ready to surrender, not yet ready to succumb to the overwhelming odds. This was his story, his survival, and the world would remember, if only briefly, the courage of a single man against an entire army. Night fell over the battlefield, thick and suffocating, cloaking the ruins in an almost unnatural darkness. The soldier moved cautiously, each step calculated, every shadow a potential threat. The moon cast a pale, ghostly light that glinted off broken metal and shattered glass. The streets, once teeming with life, now echoed only with the faintest whisper of wind through splintered walls and the distant rumble of artillery. The air was heavy, almost tangible, carrying the scent of smoke, blood, and damp earth. a combination that burned into his senses and refused to leave. He paused behind a collapsed archway, listening. A patrol passed within 20 yards, their boots crunching over broken cobblestones. Their voices were low but firm, giving orders that carried the authority of trained soldiers. He counted, noted, and memorized their patterns. These were no ordinary men, they were disciplined, efficient, and deadly. Yet they were human. Every human has limits, and tonight he would find them. Crouched in the shadows, he thought of home, faint, almost unreachable memories of warmth and laughter, of family and safety. Those thoughts were dangerous but necessary. They reminded him why he had to survive, why retreat was not an option. Every choice, every movement was measured against a single goal: to live, to escape, and to turn what seemed impossible into a story of defiance. He moved silently, using the rubble as cover, blending with the environment, almost becoming part of the ruins. His rifle was an extension of himself, cold and precise, each movement practiced and controlled. He adjusted his scope, scanning for movement, shadows, anything that indicated life. A flicker of movement, a sleeve, a boot, a rifle glinting in the moonlight could mean the difference between life and death. Patience was his greatest weapon. Hours passed, the night deepened. Every sound seemed amplified in the heavy silence, a branch snapping, a loose stone rolling, the faint whistle of wind through the skeletons of buildings. Each signal was potential danger, each breath a gamble. Somewhere the enemy searched, somewhere the threat moved unseen. Yet he pressed on, silent and invisible, an observer in a world that had become a hunt. By midnight, he had reached a vantage point atop a half-collapsed building. From here, he could see the enemy's encampment, a cluster of figures moving like shadows, lighting small fires, communicating in low tones. They were confident, perhaps too confident. Confidence can blind even the most experienced soldier. He watched them carefully, noting shifts in position, patterns of movement, and the rhythms of the night. Every observation was a potential advantage. Suddenly, a single light flickered, a lantern swung carelessly, exposing the silhouette of a soldier. His instinct screamed. He raised his rifle, adjusted for wind, and took the shot. The rifle cracked in the still night. The figure collapsed silently, and the enemy patrol reacted instantly, confusion flashing across their movements. He did not linger. One shot was all he could afford. To stay would be to invite death. He slipped from his perch, ghost-like, merging with the darkness once more. The hours dragged on. Fatigue gnawed at his muscles, hunger clawed at his stomach, and thirst burned his throat. Yet he could not rest, could not allow himself a moment of vulnerability. Sleep in this environment was death, caution was life. He pressed forward, moving through narrow alleys, behind ruined walls, using every shadow, every fragment of rubble as armor. The enemy was everywhere, yet nowhere specific. Every corner could conceal a sniper, every doorway a squad waiting to ambush. By 2 a.m., he had crossed half the sector, each street a gauntlet, each intersection a test of nerves. His hands were raw from gripping the rifle, his eyes strained from scanning the darkness. And yet he moved with an almost unnatural precision, guided by training, instinct, and the sheer will to survive. The battlefield was a chessboard, and he was calculating every move, anticipating the enemy's response, always one step ahead. Then, from the corner of his eye, movement, a shadow shifting too deliberately, too quickly. A trap, perhaps a patrol, possibly. He froze, heart pounding, breathing measured, eyes scanning. The shadow moved again, revealing the glint of a bayonet. He had been spotted. The hunter was now the hunted. He pressed himself low against the wall, waiting, counting, planning. Every second mattered. Hesitation could mean death. The shadow passed, moving cautiously, patrolling the ruins as if sensing something amiss. He waited until it disappeared, then slipped into the darkness once more. Adrenaline surged through him, sharpening his senses, steadying his hands. Each heartbeat was a reminder of mortality, each breath a defiance of the enemy's overwhelming numbers. By 4 a.m., the first hints of dawn appeared, a weak gray light creeping over the horizon, exposing the contours of the ruins. He paused to survey the terrain. The enemy camp was still active, but their movements were slower, less coordinated. Exhaustion had set in. This was his moment. He could exploit their fatigue, move through gaps, and continue his escape. Every ounce of energy mattered. Every decision counted. As the sun rose, the world seemed to hold its breath. Birds began to stir, their songs eerily normal amidst the devastation. The air lightened, yet danger remained. He pressed on, silent, invisible, a shadow moving through the shattered streets. The memory of every fallen comrade, every close call, every shot fired guided his movements. Survival was no longer just instinct, it was art. By sunrise, he had reached the edge of the sector, the first milestone in a journey that had begun under impossible odds. The enemy remained vast, their numbers overwhelming, yet he had survived the night. Against thousands alone, he had endured. Against impossible odds, he had moved, fought, and lived. This was not heroics, this was survival. And as the first light of day illuminated the ruins, he knew that his struggle was far from over. Every second still counted, every movement still mattered, and the war was far from done. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of smoke and damp earth. Each step he took echoed softly against the broken cobblestones, a reminder that silence was no longer guaranteed. The ruins were quiet now, deceptively calm, but he knew better. Danger lurked in every shadow, in every alley, behind every collapsed wall. He moved with deliberate caution, aware that even the smallest mistake could turn his escape into a death trap. His senses were heightened, every sound, every movement amplified, every shadow a potential threat. As he rounded a corner, he froze. Ahead, a squad of enemy soldiers had taken position, their rifles trained on the streets, their boots crunching over debris. They had formed a loose perimeter, confident yet unaware of the predator moving unseen among them. He crouched behind a broken fountain, its cracked stone surface providing him perfect cover, and studied their formation. Timing would be everything. One wrong move and he would be trapped. He checked his rifle, ensuring the chamber was ready, the safety off, and the scope aligned. He calculated their patrol patterns, noting the gaps, the brief moments when their attention faltered. This was a test of patience, of nerves, of strategy. His heartbeat was steady, his breathing controlled as he waited for the perfect moment. Hours felt like minutes. Every second counted, and yet he had to stretch them, prolong the suspense until the enemy's confidence became their weakness. He could feel the weight of the night pressing on him, fatigue creeping into his muscles, but he pushed it aside. Survival demanded focus, not distraction. Soldier shifted, exposing a sliver of vulnerability. He fired. The shot rang out, sharp and precise, echoing against the ruins. The soldier collapsed silently, and confusion rippled through the enemy ranks. The squad reacted instinctively, scanning, shouting, moving toward the sound. He did not linger. Moving swiftly, silently, he slipped from cover to cover, using the terrain to his advantage. Every shadow, every piece of rubble, every ruined wall was an ally in this deadly game of hide and seek. The streets twisted and turned, a labyrinth of destruction, each corner a potential ambush. He navigated through the ruins with practiced ease, almost as if he had memorized every path, every obstacle. The enemy was close but unaware of his exact position. He could hear their voices, the clatter of boots, the occasional bark of orders. Each sound was a clue, a guide, a confirmation that he was still alive. He moved with a dancer's grace, precise and measured, blending with the shadows, invisible yet present, a ghost among the ruins. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to reach out like fingers. He pressed on, avoiding the main roads, sticking to alleys and rubble-strewn paths, moving ever closer to the edge of the city. Each step was a gamble, each breath a challenge. The enemy's numbers were overwhelming, yet he relied on skill, training, and instinct to navigate the deadly landscape. The ruins, once a symbol of destruction, had become his ally, a protective shroud that concealed his movements. By midday, he had reached a vantage point overlooking the enemy's central position. From here, he could see their activity, the patterns of movement, the lapses in attention. It was a dangerous position, exposed and risky, but the potential reward was great. He needed to create a diversion, to draw attention away from his intended path, to manipulate the enemy's perception. Timing, precision, and calculated risk were his only tools. He set his rifle, adjusted the scope, and waited for the perfect moment. The first opportunity came when a group of soldiers crossed the courtyard below, laughing, confident, unaware of the eyes watching from above. He fired a single, precise shot that struck true. Chaos erupted below. Soldiers shouted, guns flared, and confusion spread like wildfire. He did not hesitate. Moving swiftly, he descended from his perch, using the chaos to mask his movements. Every step was calculated, every decision measured. He had survived the night, and now he was exploiting the enemy's own mistakes to continue his escape. The streets became a gauntlet of uncertainty, each corner hiding danger, each alley a potential trap. He moved silently, relying on his instincts, his training, and his understanding of human behavior. Fatigue gnawed at his body, hunger burned in his stomach, but he pushed these aside. Focus was everything. The enemy was numerous, but they were not infallible. Confidence could blind them, exhaustion could weaken them, and a single mistake could spell disaster. He waited for those mistakes, exploiting each one with precision and efficiency. By late afternoon, he had reached the outskirts of the city, the first true milestone in his journey. The enemy's numbers were still overwhelming, yet he had survived. Against all odds alone, he had navigated a deadly maze, evaded countless threats, and emerged still alive. But the journey was far from over. The open terrain ahead offered no cover, and the enemy's patrols were still active. He paused, catching his breath, scanning the horizon, preparing for the next phase. Every second mattered, every movement was critical, and the war was far from finished. The outskirts were deceptive in their calm. Open fields stretched before him, dotted with the occasional tree or rubble pile offering little in the way of concealment. The enemy, aware that someone had slipped through the city's chaos, had intensified their patrols, scanning methodically, coordinating their search in a deadly dance of strategy. Each step he took was measured, deliberate, the crunch of debris beneath his boots minimized, the angle of sunlight considered. He was acutely aware that the open terrain left him exposed, but he also knew that hesitation could be fatal. He crouched behind a low stone wall, assessing the distance to the next cover point. His rifle was ready, but he could not afford to fire unless absolutely necessary. Each shot would give away his position, and the enemy would respond with overwhelming force. The shadows were his ally, the terrain a shield, and his instincts his most reliable weapon. He took a deep breath, letting the air fill his lungs and then releasing it slowly, calming the tension coiled tight within his muscles. Every movement was a calculated risk. Ahead, he spotted a small patrol moving along the tree line, their rifles slung but their eyes alert. They were unaware of the hunter among them, the ghost who had dismantled squads with precision and patience. He studied their formation, noting the gaps, the slow turns of their heads, the pattern of their footfalls. Patience was essential. He could not rush. One wrong move would expose him, one miscalculated step could end his life. He waited, counting heartbeats, calculating distances, visualizing escape routes in case the situation went wrong. The first patrol passed without incident, but the tension did not abate. He moved quickly, slipping from cover to cover, using every shadow, every irregularity in the terrain to conceal his presence. The enemy was methodical, disciplined, yet even the most disciplined soldiers could be caught unaware. Fatigue was beginning to set in, a subtle weight in his legs, a dull ache in his back, but he ignored it. Survival required focus, not complaint, and he had learned to override his body's natural urges with sheer mental discipline. By late afternoon, he had reached a small ridge overlooking a narrow valley, the enemy positioned below, unaware of his vantage point. This was an opportunity, a chance to manipulate the battlefield despite being vastly outnumbered. He could see their routines, their patrol patterns, the ways in which their confidence made them predictable. He adjusted his scope, calculating wind speed, distance, and trajectory. Precision was critical. Each action could set off a chain reaction, and he had learned the hard way that in war, every detail mattered. A single shot rang out, cutting through the still air. One enemy soldier dropped, the others reacting instantly, scanning the ridge, shouting, moving in panic. The chaos provided him with cover as he descended carefully, methodically, never giving himself away. Every movement was controlled, deliberate yet fluid. He had become a shadow, a phantom in the dying light, exploiting confusion and fear to his advantage. The enemy's sheer numbers were daunting, but their overconfidence was an exploitable weakness. The valley stretched before him, a deadly gauntlet of patrols and snipers. He paused at the edge, weighing his options, considering the probabilities. His mind was a map of tactical possibilities, each one calculated, each risk assessed. One wrong decision could trap him, could end everything he had fought to survive. He pressed forward, moving slowly, carefully, every step a balance of speed and stealth, his rifle ready, his senses alert. The enemy could be anywhere, and he treated every shadow as a potential threat. Hours passed, the sun dipping lower, casting long, distorted shadows. He used the fading light to his advantage, moving in rhythm with the shifting darkness, merging with it, becoming part of it. The enemy's patrols had grown cautious, their discipline tested by the uncertainty, yet he remained elusive, a predator in a jungle of concrete and ruin. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat was a test of endurance and skill, and he passed each one with a deadly grace. By nightfall, he had reached a narrow ravine, the enemy positioned on either side, unaware of his presence. He knew that crossing would be the most dangerous part yet, but also the most crucial. Stealth, timing, and precision would be his allies. One misstep could result in immediate detection, and the overwhelming numbers would leave him no chance. He crouched low, scanning the terrain, calculating distances, and planning his route with meticulous care. He waited until the patrols shifted, the soldiers moving away from their fixed positions, creating a small window of opportunity. Swiftly, silently, he moved, his body low, his rifle ready, using every ounce of terrain to remain concealed. The enemy remained unaware, focused on their routine, confident that the hunter had long since disappeared. He reached the far side, heart pounding, muscles tense, knowing that the moment had passed and the danger was temporarily behind him. The night air was cold, carrying the distant sounds of activity, the soft clatter of movement, the occasional barked order. He paused, taking in the surroundings, letting the tension ebb slightly while remaining alert. This was survival at its most raw, a test of patience, skill, and mental endurance. The enemy was everywhere, yet he had survived through cunning, precision, and the careful orchestration of his actions. Every step forward was a victory, every breath a testament to his focus and discipline. The darkness was a cloak, hiding him from the enemy's prying eyes, yet it also concealed unseen hazards. Rubble, trenches, and scattered debris turned the ground into a treacherous maze. Every step required caution, every movement had to be measured. He paused frequently, listening to the faintest sounds, the rustle of leaves, the snap of twigs, the distant chatter of enemy patrols. One mistake, one misjudged step, and it could mean the difference between life and death. Ahead, a ruined farmhouse provided potential shelter, but also a trap if the enemy had anticipated his movements. He approached cautiously, moving along the shadows cast by broken walls and fallen beams. Inside, the darkness was almost absolute, yet he could make out the shapes of overturned furniture, broken glass, and signs of recent occupation. His instincts screamed that this place could be dangerous, but it also offered temporary cover from the relentless patrols outside. He entered silently, every muscle coiled, eyes scanning the room for threats. A small fire pit suggested the enemy had been here recently, and faint footprints in the dirt confirmed it. He crouched, examining the marks, mapping the patrol routes in his mind. The enemy had become predictable in their movements, and he planned to exploit that predictability. Patience, as always, was his greatest weapon. He waited, listening to the wind, the distant sounds of patrols, the rhythmic tapping of his own heartbeat, slow and steady to maintain control. Hours passed. Outside, the patrols had shifted, and the area was temporarily quiet. He used the lull to gather supplies, canned food, a water canteen, scraps of cloth for camouflage. Every piece of equipment could mean survival or doom, and he meticulously prepared for the night ahead. The enemy was relentless, but he had learned to move silently, to blend with the environment, to become part of shadows themselves. Suddenly, the faint sound of boots on broken wood reached his ears. He froze, pressing himself against the far wall, heart hammering, breath controlled. The enemy was returning, checking the farmhouse for signs of intruders. He remained still, counting their steps, noting the pauses, the shifts in weight, the pattern of movement. The soldiers entered, weapons ready, sweeping the room systematically. His pulse slowed as he waited for the right moment. One soldier moved past the shadows where he was concealed, unaware of the predator in the room. Another glance, a misstep, and they could discover him. He had to act quickly. Using the cover of darkness, he shifted silently, keeping his body low and movements minimal. The soldiers passed, oblivious to his presence. He exhaled slowly, tension leaving his shoulders, but his vigilance remained. After they left, he moved to a small window, peering out at the open field beyond. The moonlight cast silver patterns on the ground, highlighting patrols moving in formation. The enemy was methodical, organized, and dangerous, yet their confidence made them predictable. He studied them, plotting the most efficient path forward, noting every obstacle, every gap in their formation, every potential risk. The terrain ahead was unforgiving, a combination of trenches, scattered trees, and jagged debris. Crossing it required agility, timing, and nerves of steel. He waited for a patrol to pass, then sprinted from cover to cover, using every shadow and obstacle to mask his movement. A snapped twig betrayed him briefly, drawing a shout from a distant soldier, but his speed and knowledge of the terrain allowed him to evade detection. Hours turned into the late night. Fatigue weighed heavily on him, but he pushed forward. Hunger, thirst, and exhaustion were minor compared to the constant threat of discovery and death. Every movement was a calculated gamble, every breath a controlled measure to avoid detection. The darkness was both an ally and an enemy, concealing him while masking dangers hidden in the shadows. By early morning, he had reached a narrow ravine cutting through the terrain, offering a natural pathway toward relative safety. Yet it was also a potential trap, with enemy patrols likely to cross its path. He paused, assessing the risks, calculating the enemy's likely movements, and planning his next steps. Survival required more than speed. It demanded cunning, patience, and a constant awareness of the smallest details. He descended into the ravine, moving low, silent, blending with the uneven terrain. Trolls above were distant, yet he remained alert. Each sound, each shadow, each distant footfall could be a harbinger of discovery. He had learned to trust his instincts, to read the environment, and to anticipate danger before it arrived. The ravine was narrow, constraining movement, but also providing cover. He pressed forward inch by inch, using the jagged rocks and scattered debris as protection. Suddenly, a faint glint caught his eye, a reflection from a rifle scope. An enemy sniper hidden in the rocks above, scanning the ravine below. Time slowed. He calculated the distance, angle, and potential trajectory. Movement was dangerous, but standing still was equally deadly. He waited, focusing on the sniper's position, the shadows cast by moonlight, the slightest twitch of the scope. A single shot echoed through the ravine. The sniper's aim was precise, yet he anticipated it, ducking just in time as the bullet whistled past. He returned fire, not aiming to kill, but to distract, to force the sniper to move. The enemy shifted, searching for his presence, and he used the moment to advance, pressing forward, staying low, keeping the natural cover between him and the sniper. Hours of tense movement brought him closer to the opposite end of the ravine. He was exhausted, every muscle screaming, every nerve taut, yet the danger was far from over. Enemy patrols were still active, and the sniper could return at any moment. He moved deliberately, carefully, understanding that a single misstep could unravel everything. Survival was a delicate balance of action, patience, and instinct, and he had mastered it through relentless practice and necessity. The first rays of dawn began to pierce the horizon, painting the sky in muted shades of orange and gray. Visibility improved slightly, but the terrain remained perilous. Every shadow could hide an enemy patrol, every tree could conceal a sniper. He moved cautiously, each step deliberate, making use of every natural feature to mask his presence. The exhaustion from the previous night weighed heavily on him, yet the thought of being caught drove him forward with a singular focus: survival. Ahead, a cluster of rocks formed a small ridge. From this vantage point, he could survey the surrounding area, plan his next movements, and potentially spot enemy positions before they spotted him. Crawling the final few yards, He pressed himself against the rocks, breathing slowly, ears tuned to every sound. In the distance, he saw movement, enemy soldiers patrolling the edge of a clearing. They were unaware of his presence, their formation tight but predictable. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. He observed for several minutes, noting their rhythm, the intervals between their steps, and the gaps in their formation. He needed to cross the clearing without being detected, a feat that would require both timing and ingenuity. The first soldier stepped over a fallen branch, the second paused to adjust his pack. Perfect. He calculated the distance, the timing, and the exact moment to make his move. Using a combination of sprinting and quick dives behind sporadic cover, he crossed the first half of the clearing. His heart pounded, every muscle tense, yet he remained focused on the path ahead. A slight rustle drew his attention. One soldier glanced in his direction. Time seemed to slow. He flattened himself against the ground, breath barely moving, waiting for the soldier to turn away. When the opportunity came, he continued, each movement synchronized with the patrol's pattern, a deadly dance of precision and instinct. By mid-morning, he had reached a narrow path leading into a dense thicket. The enemy had avoided this area, deeming it too difficult to traverse. It was rough, uneven, and riddled with hidden roots and rocks, but it offered relative safety. He moved with caution, using the underbrush as camouflage, blending with the shadows and keeping his body low. Every step was a calculated risk. One misstep could snap a branch or send a stone tumbling, revealing his position. As he progressed, memories of the previous days flashed through his mind. Every sniper killed, every patrol avoided, every close call. Each moment had honed him, sharpened his instincts, and reinforced the understanding that survival was a product of both skill and luck. Now, every decision mattered more than ever, and the stakes could not be higher. Suddenly, he froze. Head partially obscured by foliage, he spotted a pair of enemy soldiers setting up a temporary observation post. Their movements were methodical, unaware that danger lurked nearby. He needed to bypass them without engagement. A fight here would be suicidal. He carefully retraced his steps, finding a narrow detour that hugged the edge of the terrain, using fallen logs and uneven ground to remain out of sight. Every nerve was alert, every sense focused on survival. Crossing the detour, he finally reached a small stream. The sound of running water was both a blessing and a hazard. It could mask his movements, but it also provided a point of orientation for the enemy if they were listening carefully. He used the stream as a guide, moving slowly, minimizing noise and keeping an eye on the opposite bank. The water was cold, numbing his legs as he waded through, but it offered a temporary shield from potential sniper lines of sight. Hours passed and fatigue gnawed at his resolve. Hunger and thirst were secondary to the constant awareness of the enemy, but he knew he needed to rest briefly. Using the cover of a dense thicket, he crouched, pressed his back against a tree, and allowed himself a short moment to regain composure. His body shook from exertion and tension, but his mind remained clear, focused on the ultimate goal: reaching friendly lines and surviving the ordeal. After the brief rest, he resumed his movement. The terrain shifted to an abandoned village, buildings half-collapsed, streets littered with debris. It was dangerous, but offered a chance for concealment. He slipped through shadows, ducked behind walls, and moved from cover to cover, aware that every corner could harbor enemy patrols or hidden snipers. The tension was relentless. Every sound, every flicker of movement could mean confrontation. Near midday, he spotted a small group of enemy soldiers converging in the main square. His options were limited. Engagement was not possible. He could not survive a firefight here. Using the lessons of the previous night, he planned a route that utilized alleyways, crumbling walls, and shadowed corners to bypass the group. Timing was critical, and he waited patiently, counting heartbeats, synchronizing movements with their patrols, and moving only when the gaps appeared. Sweat streamed down his face, muscles burned, but he pressed forward. Each step was measured, calculated, and executed with precision. The enemy remained unaware, confident in their control of the area, yet the lone figure slipping through shadows defied their expectations. Every narrow escape reinforced the harsh reality of the environment and the high cost of vigilance. By late afternoon, he emerged from the village outskirts into a wooded area. Here, the enemy presence thinned, offering a reprieve from constant exposure. He moved cautiously, listening to the distant sounds of engagement elsewhere, understanding that the battlefield was alive with conflict beyond his immediate perception. The terrain was still challenging, but each step forward brought him closer to safety. Finally, near dusk, he reached a ridge overlooking the friendly perimeter. From this vantage point, he could see the lines, the fortifications, and the soldiers who represented safety, allies who could provide food, water, and protection. Relief washed over him, tempered by the knowledge that danger still lingered until he had fully crossed into friendly territory. He descended the ridge cautiously, moving from cover to cover, avoiding patrols near the perimeter. Every instinct honed over days of survival guided him, ensuring that no careless movement revealed his presence. Each step was a culmination of experience, skill, and perseverance. When he finally crossed the last stretch and entered the friendly lines, a mix of exhaustion and triumph overtook him. Safe at last, he collapsed briefly, catching his breath, reflecting on the ordeal. Alone against thousands, facing relentless danger, he had survived through skill, patience, and sheer determination. The battle was over for him personally, but the lessons endured. Patience, observation, and adaptability were as lethal as any weapon. His survival would become a story whispered among those who understood the extreme stakes of warfare, a tale of cunning, endurance, and the will to live when the odds were overwhelmingly against him. As night fell, he finally allowed himself to rest, knowing that every heartbeat, every calculated movement, and every decision had carried him through one of the most harrowing experiences imaginable. Alone against thousands, he had not only survived but emerged with the knowledge that one determined, skilled individual could change the course of events, leaving a mark that would be remembered long after the battle ended. If this story of survival and sheer determination left you on the edge of your seat, don't let it end here. Hit that like button to honor the bravery of those who faced impossible odds. Subscribe now for more untold stories from the world's most intense battles, stories that will shock, inspire, and keep you hooked until the very last moment. And don't forget to turn on notifications, because the next unbelievable tale of courage could change everything you thought you knew about history. Share this video with anyone who needs a reminder of what humans are capable of when survival is the only option. Your next adventure starts the moment you click. Are you ready?